Hi, everyone, and welcome to Vulnerability and Courage, which is a free webinar in the series on shame, vulnerability, scarcity, and joy. If you have access to your computer, there are slides that go along with this. You can use your phone for the sound and use your computer for the slideshow and to chat if you want to. But you can also just kick back, use the audio. Towards the end of the day like this, I would probably rather just close my eyes and listen. And you won't miss anything. But the recording does this neat thing where it also records the video and the slides. So if you listen to it later and you want to see the images, you'll have those too. Let's start out by just settling in together. And if you're in a safe place to do it, go ahead and close your eyes. And wiggle your body around a little bit. Sometimes my head sits my body down, and it's not actually a position my body wants to see in. So you might try just flexing fingers and toes, wrinkling up your face, maybe wiggling a little bit, shifting your butt, flexing and extending your spine, crossing, uncrossing your legs, and just make sure that you're in a place that your body actually wants to be. The body has great wisdom, and listening to the wisdom of the body is part of what we'll encourage you to do today. And if you decide to go on for the longer workshop series, that is also part of what we'll do, is notice what our bodies want, how we feel in our bodies, and use the wisdom that comes through them. So right now, the tiny bit of wisdom from your body is, how do you want to be oriented in space? Do you even want to sit up? Maybe you've been sitting all day and you want to lie down, or stand up. Listen to your body and play. And then when you're ready, start to notice your breath. The breath is this constant companion. We are always breathing. The breath is always there with us, and we often forget about it. So in this moment, notice the breath. Breathing is an act of vulnerability and an act of intimacy. We don't have any choice over it. We breathe regardless of where we are. As long as we're alive as a human being, we're breathing. That's the same thing with vulnerability. As long as we're alive and human, we are going to be in vulnerability. There is no way around it. It's not a choice. It is part of life. We can choose how we want to engage with it, and that's what this webinar is going to be about right now. Choosing how we engage with vulnerability, and some of that's going to be reframing how we think about it. But for this moment, just feel your breath, feel your body here. Let's take your right hand and place it over your heart, and your left hand and place it on your belly. Feel the rise and fall of your own breath for a moment. Noticing the intimacy, and either noticing or maybe even just being curious about how vulnerability connects to the breath. How we take in that which is around us. We take in something outside of us and make it ourselves. And then if you're ready, you can bring your hands together at heart center in what's often called a prayer position, offering thanks to yourself for being here. Gratitude is a wonderful practice, and it makes vulnerability easier. So just offer thanks to yourself for being here. You could be 1,000 other places right now. I'm sure you have 100 other things on your to-do list, or you could if you tried to put 100 other things on your to-do list. So you are here. And there's something in you that is stepping towards understanding vulnerability and courage, understanding shame, scarcity, vulnerability, joy, and really wanting to embrace them. So I so welcome you here. So let's take a look at our slides. The first one is vulnerability. The question, exquisite or excruciating? Brene Brown is someone that I admire greatly, and she has done a lot of research on these topics that I'm talking about: shame, vulnerability, scarcity, joy. A lot of my language comes from her. A lot of the practices that I'm going to teach about are from my own life experience. Stories I share will be from my life, but a lot of the language will also be from Brene Brown. She's done 10, 12 years of research by this point, and has really worked to fine-tune and put language and definitions around it. So if at any point you're curious if something's my wording or Renee's, feel free to ask. They're rather intertwined with each other. no disrespect meant to either one of us. I think our work is complementary. So exquisite or excruciating is something from Brene Brown, where she said she was going through her research and she found that vulnerability was, she had known this, or suspected it at least before going into her research, that vulnerability is part of and connected to our worst shame experiences, our fear, the times we felt really let down, the times we felt really hurt. But what she also found is that vulnerability is absolutely the key to creativity, to joy, to love, to belonging. And she actually, in one of her TED Talks, the first one I saw, has a huge slide shown up on this big screen behind her that says nervous breakdown. It's crossed out and says spiritual awakening. For her to, when she found that vulnerability was absolutely essential to living this loving, open, creative, connected life, she was like, oh my God, I don't know what to do with that. And her whole system kind of went on blink. For me and with you in doing this work, I think that vulnerability, I kind of came into it from the other side where it's like, yay, vulnerability, it's so awesome. We should all be more vulnerable with each other all the time. It's amazing. Of course, vulnerability is exquisite, except that it's really hard. And when I want to get vulnerable about something that I don't think is really worth speaking about, I kind of want to hide it under the rug. And so coming through this work, I found that my ideas about vulnerability and my ability to express them weren't quite matching up. They've become much more in alignment with each other now. And so I'll go on to that next point, which is many of us struggle to be vulnerable because we think of vulnerability as weakness. We have stories in our head that say, I'm supposed to be perfect and strong, and if I'm vulnerable, I'm not those things, and I'm not going to be loved. I'm not going to be wanted. I'm not going to have anything to offer here. I can't show my vulnerability. So that's when we think about being vulnerable ourselves. But when we hear someone else being vulnerable, we're often inspired and think they are courageous. The people that speak to us the most, that bring tears to our eyes or inspire us, and we feel like, yes, those are people that are being vulnerable. They're talking about their lives and their stories and offering that as a gift to share with us. So we have this tendency to want to see vulnerability in others, but want to shield it and kind of keep it away from ourselves. Because it's hard to be vulnerable. This is a picture on this next screen of the pond that's near me here at Dancing Rabbit. It's a swimming pond. And for those of you who get into ponds, you know that often the bottom is mucky. It's messy. Creatures live there, maybe crawdads, maybe fish, maybe snapping turtles. You're not really sure because you can't see the bottom, you can't see your feet, and you get in more than like 3 inches and who knows what's going on down there. So it's a good image for this idea that it's hard to be vulnerable and nobody likes vulnerability. It's scary, it's unpredictable, it's messy. There aren't any guarantees. You can't make an agreement with somebody where you say, I'm going to tell you this thing that I'm scared to tell you, but I want to make sure that you're still going to like me afterwards, right? I mean, we can say that, and some people will actually go there with us, but really there aren't any guarantees. We don't know how anybody's going to respond. And to some degree, that's kind of what makes vulnerability vulnerable. If we knew what was going to happen on the other side, it wouldn't be such a big deal to step into it. So we're scared to get in the pond because we don't know what's going to happen, and we think there are maybe scary creatures in there. But there aren't pond sharks. There really aren't. So on the next slide, there's this great white shark coming out of the pond. Vulnerability is not really as bad as we think. I love the image of the pond shark, though, because water is a very vulnerable place for me to be. I'm not super comfortable in the water. I was in my 30s before I actually got the hang of like freestyle or the crawl and being able to actually breathe. Swimming is not my forte. So water is a great metaphor for vulnerability. And in the pond, you can't see what's happening. And especially going swimming at night. There are times when I've gone down to the pond, it's beautiful starlit night, and it's like, oh, and maybe the moon is up, and maybe it's like solstice and June 21st or something. I'm like, oh, wouldn't it be great to be in the water and be held by the water? I'm in the water and I'm thinking of sharks. And I'm like, okay, I know I'm in a pond. There are not sharks in ponds, but my mind is saying, Jaws, Jaws, you could get eaten. There are scary things in here. So there are times, and the reason I'm bringing this up is because vulnerability is like that, sitting down and talking to someone in our business and bringing forth a dream, offering something that we really want to bring out into the world and saying that we could sell it, that we could actually make our living doing something we really, really love. That's a vulnerable act. To do that, to step up and say, yes, this is what I'm offering with its gifts, with its imperfections, and I want you to pay me for it, is a vulnerable act. It's scary, it's messy, it's uncomfortable, but really, there's not a pond shark. Like, there's maybe a crawdad. Your toes might get a little nibbled. Somebody might say, I don't want it. That's probably about as bad as it gets. It could get a little bit worse, and somebody says, I actually don't think that's worth anything. That hurts. But no one's actually going to feed us to sharks. We're not going to get ripped to shreds if we offer up our vulnerability. And vulnerability is necessary. So it's not quite as bad as we think, and it's essential. So it's essential for connection and nurturing touch. There's an image of getting a massage there. And I actually couldn't figure this out for the longest time until I started doing this work. But for me to get, I'm lying down on a massage table and I'm naked and I'm receiving that kind of nurturing touch for an hour is kind of pushing it for me. Like a half hour, 45 minutes generally feels good. An hour is pushing it a little. I once, or a couple of times, quote unquote, treated myself to an hour-and-a-half massage. I got up off that table so tense. And I'm like, why on earth? This is supposed to be this experience that tells me, tells my body, you're held, you're loved, you're safe, it's helping my muscles relax. This is supposed to be really good for me. So here's the supposed to. It's supposed to be really good for me. Why don't I feel good? Why do I have a headache? Why do my muscles feel tense? And as I'm starting, getting further into this work, I realize it's because there's a degree of vulnerability that I am not able to sustain, especially in touch with a stranger. This is someone who hasn't actually earned the right to touch my body for that long with that much intimacy, and my body's reacting to it. My head might be saying, this is great. My body's saying, I'm done. That's too much. That's too much vulnerability too quickly. This is some of how our bodies have a great deal of wisdom. And just on that note, part of why I've been able to notice this is that I've gone into longer touch with people who have earned the right, who have listened to my stories, who have held me while I've cried, who have been there and been very nurturing to me and earned that trust. And I can stay in contact for a long time without feeling that tension in my body. Partially, too, because I don't go into the story of what it's supposed to be. We have enough breadth to our relationship that I know I can show up pretty much any way that I could show up, and it'll be all right. So anyway, vulnerability, nurturing touch. Also, creativity and friendship. So there's this image of a bunch of people reaching their hands into a circle. Some of my friends at Dancing Rabbit, we get together, co-create. We're working on co-creating an eco-village together, a sustainable way of life for human beings on the planet at this time. It's no small undertaking. We need to show up and get vulnerable with each other in order to let that creativity and friendship happen, and also in order to tolerate the friction of living closely together with this many other human beings. We also need good boundaries with each other. And so this is part of what we'll talk about with vulnerability, maybe here, certainly in the longer workshop. My idea about vulnerability, I mentioned at the beginning, I was just like, yay, vulnerability is awesome. I would get too vulnerable with people too quickly and tell them too much of my story. And it wasn't until reading Brené Brown's book that I realized people would pull back because it was too much too fast. It was like me with the massage therapist and the hour-and-a-half massage when that person hadn't earned the right to touch me. When I shared my stories and went into, I'm thinking of, I got divorced from my first marriage and sat down with a woman. We were doing microphone testing, and she's like, hey, tell me about you. Why are you here? And I just shared my whole story. Well, here's what happened in our relationship, and here's how I'm here. Like, we had to do this mic testing for like 45 minutes or an hour, and I pretty much just talked the whole time about me. And it seemed like she was there with me, but then I pretty much didn't see her again. We would just kind of cross paths, and she'd like wave to me and go the other way. Like, I didn't really see her for a year. And then she finally came up to me and she said, you know, that first conversation, she's like, I'm sorry that I actually never reached out to be friends with you, because I reached out to her several times. She's like, I'm sorry I never reached out to be friends with you, but it was just too much. That first day when we sat down and were talking, you were mirroring to me what's going on in my life and my relationship, and I was not ready to look at it, and I didn't want to see it, and I didn't want to hang out with you then. And I was just like, oh, that's kind of cool. So it wasn't something wrong with me, but still, I offered too much, or from another point of view, I threw too much on her that our relationship didn't have the capacity to withstand. I didn't know what was going on for her. We had no give and take. It was just me giving, or from other points of view, you could think about it as like dumping. Like, here you go. Here's a whole pile of stuff. Okay, so there's also love and belonging. Vulnerability is necessary for love and belonging. There's a sweet picture of two people kissing next to this beautiful pond in the fall. I really like that image. And it just warms my heart about how, in order to actually let ourselves step into love and look at another person and let ourselves be seen, we have to get vulnerable. And it's hard, especially in that kind of intimate connection, especially if you're in a marriage and you've got kids and you've got a house together and you've got finances and maybe you run a business together. Like, oh, it is hard to let yourself be really seen by each other because there is so much at stake. But for those of you who are in those kind of relationships and you've touched on that vulnerability, or maybe you're in it often, you also know how good it feels to be seen that closely and that intimately. So if it's hard and it's necessary, how do we learn? This is a picture of a crazy roller coaster. I just look at this and go, oh my gosh, what does that look like to ride? But it's a great metaphor for something I say often. We stay on the roller coaster. We get on the ride and we stay on it. Can you imagine if you're one of those people on that roller coaster and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm feeling too vulnerable, and you jump off? That's when you get super hurt. Like, I mean, that can be fatal if you're on a roller coaster, and it can certainly be fatal to a relationship or to your, it can deeply damage and cause trauma to your vulnerability muscles and your ordinary courage if you start to open up, or your friend starts to open up with you and you bail and you just pull back, shut down. Some of the most common ways that I've seen people pull back and shut down are to go into numbing, to go into overwork, to go into alcohol, to go into overeating, even to go into depression. Like, the things that we do that we just shut down, we pull back, and we numb how we're feeling and how we're connecting to each other. Staying on the roller coaster doesn't mean you have to go 90 miles an hour and go into, steep hills and sharp turns all the time. You could slow the roller coaster down. You could even pause for a little bit. You could say, I need a break, but you stay on. You come back into the relationship. You stay with it. And I also offer that because part of my journey in this shame and vulnerability and scarcity and joy has been in the realm of intimate relationship, intimate sexual relationship. And I have learned that I would get off the roller coaster, or I would numb out. And through going a little slower with my vulnerability and being more honest and doing more self-care and feeling support from something bigger than me, for me that comes through connection with the land most often. Through getting this other connection and support, I'm able to step into the vulnerability, let myself be seen, step into it again, let myself be seen, go through those thoughts in my mind over and over, like, okay, here I'm going to say this thing, and this might be the time when he just says, nope, you're too flawed, you're too messed up, can't handle it, see you later, don't like you anymore. And again, I step through what feels like that resistance in my own mind and my own heart to being vulnerable, and I say, okay, if this is the thing that makes him walk away, it's important to me to do it anyway. And I open up a little bit more. And I happen to be blessed with a relationship right now that I'm doing this little motion with my hands like a trampoline. It's got some give to it where I can bounce and I can still be held. And he doesn't come in and try to rescue me or save me. He's just like, yep, you're going through some stuff. Okay. And I'm like, don't you want to, you care, right? Don't you want to save me from this thing I'm going through? Like, nope, you're doing fine. That's fine. You're just sad. You're just whatever. It's fine. I'm like, oh. So that energy of what you're doing is just fine and I'm going to keep showing up has been an amazing blessing for me, moving into more vulnerability and relationship, which also means I'm moving into more joy, more connection, more love, more belonging. It's pretty awesome. But the vulnerability has to happen in order for all those other things to come through. So not only do we stay on the roller coaster, but the next slide here says we surf. And this is my just totally favorite image to bring up to myself, because people have asked me, I've been on this journey for the last couple of years now, and people ask me, how are you doing? And my standard answer was, I'm surfing. Sometimes I'm on top of the waves and I'm feeling great and I've got great balance. Sometimes I'm flipped ass over ears. I've got water up my nose and sand in my shorts, and it's not feeling so good. But it's all part of the same trip of learning to surf. So it's not bad, and it's not even really good. Like, yay, I'm so glad. I mean, it feels good to balance, and it's nice to learn. But getting neither swept up by the highs or the lows, but just noticing it's part of the journey. It's part of learning this language of vulnerability, showing up with courage, finding boundaries. Sufficiency and gratitude are also parts of it. We talked about that this morning. That's surfing. So just, if you're going to take an image away from this, I invite you to take this image of the woman on the surfboard. And, you can notice the impossible angle of her body. It looks like she's right about to fall off. And yet she's not going to. She's going to keep surfing on her board. At least that's what I imagine. So take that image of the surfboard and use surfing. Sometimes you're in the wave. Sometimes the wave looks huge and it's about to crash down on you. Sometimes you're on top of the board, you've got great balance, and you're feeling like you're flying. It's all part of the same process. The other thing, and this one definitely is better and easier to do with support. We learn what's in our vulnerability armories because we all armor ourselves from vulnerability. Most of us learned when we were kids that it's not safe to be vulnerable. We said, hey, Mommy, I want to be a ballerina when I grow up. And she said, you can't be a ballerina because you never go to ballet class. And we said, crunch, whatever. Like, that's a fairly benign example, perhaps. But just, we say things as kids that aren't actually going to happen. Our parents don't necessarily try to stop on us, or our teachers or our coaches or their friends or whatever. But as kids, we don't have a sophisticated sense of how to protect ourselves or fluidity around language. We're just trying to learn our place in the world, get into our bodies, learn how to handle emotions. And so along the way, we usually have some experiences that feel kind of like that car crash up in the top image there. But the pictures are they're indications of ways that we armor ourselves from vulnerability. And this is from Brené Brown's work. This first one is my image for foreboding joy and catastrophizing. So we embrace disappointment as a way of life. We don't get excited about things that could go well. That's kind of the foreboding joy, like just never really going for it, never letting ourselves feel the excitement, the enthusiasm, the joy, always thinking about what could go wrong, or, well, it's going to end anyway, so I shouldn't really feel excited. Catastrophizing, similar, a little bit different, It's that, oh my God, what could go wrong? Especially if you spend a lot of time watching the news, it's really easy to do the catastrophizing, because if there's nothing scary going on in your own neighborhood, you can just turn on the news and find something really scary going on somewhere else. So it brings that energy up of like something could go really wrong at any time. That's actually one of the ways we armor ourselves from feeling vulnerable. We try to prevent the pain of disappointment or loss by never really letting ourselves step into the excitement, the joy, the love. That's actually that one about trying to protect ourselves from loss through never really stepping into it has been a huge one for me personally. I've had a very hard time letting myself fully open into love of my business, of my partner, of my children, anybody, of my friends even, never letting myself step fully into love as I long for, because I'm going to lose it at some point. I mean, even if everything goes wonderfully, somebody's going to die sometime. It's like, well, I don't want to feel the loss, so I'll never let myself step into it. That's an example of how we armor ourselves from vulnerability. My other favorite one is shown by this woman over here who looks like she's wearing a dress made out of diamonds, and she's all blonde and coiffed. It's perfectionism and masks. Perfectionism, especially for those of us that are smart and get good grades or are athletic or do something that we get rewarded for doing really well, it's kind of easy to slip into this perfectionism one and start thinking that our worth is determined by getting it right and being perfect, and anything less than perfect shouldn't be shown, shouldn't be seen. So it's also easy then to put on masks or to do what I call shape-shifting. And shape-shifting is this ability to show up in a different situation as a different person, to fit in like a chameleon. And there's something really fun. I'm not going to touch on it too much, but it's called strengths perspective, and we'll definitely take a look at that in a longer workshop. But shape-shifting could be, I'm never really a solid person. You can't tell who I'm going to be because in different situations I'll show up as somebody different. But the strengths perspective is looking at where that is an asset and then working to fix the things that aren't so much assets from this position of strength. So with shape-shifting, the strengths perspective is I'm able to read people, I'm able to understand a situation, and I'm able to offer something that flows with the energy of what's going on in that situation. Okay, that's pretty cool. I change who I am, what I say, and how I show up based on who's there. That's not so good. So, but the strengths perspective allows us to feel the strength of ourselves, the goodness, and from there we have a lot more to bring to bear on shifting. If we just look at it as, oh, I shapeshift, I show up as different people, that's actually where we're into shame again. I'm not good enough, I'm doing the wrong thing, is part of the shame and part of the scarcity. So anyway, strengths perspective, we'll come back to that again. The third picture is numbing and armor. And this is another image that really works for me. It's a man with a giant battle axe wearing armor. And particularly for men, this is the way that they try to shield themselves from vulnerability. It's putting on armor and perhaps attacking as well. You know, it's like, I've got my shield, but sometimes men strike out with anger. Sometimes women do too. We have a tendency to not do it as overtly, to do barbs and snarky things and sarcasm, whereas men have a tendency to be more overt and perhaps more physical with the anger. It's not saying that one's better than the other. It's just we have tendencies in how we armor ourselves from the vulnerability and how we react when we feel that vulnerability triggered in an unsafe way. So I like this image so much better than those last three. We learn ordinary courage. So how do we open into vulnerability? We learn ordinary courage. We reach out. We tell our stories. We listen. We show up. We reflect and ask questions. We really show up with each other. All it takes is showing up as yourself. That's all it takes. That's really, really all it takes for you to show up with some of this listening, some of the reflecting, asking questions, the being curious, being gentle, the admitting you don't know everything. A little bit of humility goes a long way in this too. Just showing up. Just like there's this hand of this little kid reaching out and holding the finger of a grown-up. It's okay to reach out with that kind of innocence and still to hold ourselves in that way as well. So the other thing we'll do a lot of in this course is we'll look at kind of the macro level of relationships, the relationships happening outside of you, with your children, with your parents, with your business, with your lover, with your friends and community, with yourself. But we'll also look at how all of those relationships are going on inside of you. There are parts of you that are like the childlike part, that are the parent part, that's the part of you that really wants to create a business, and the part of you that's worried if you really go into creating your business, you're going to take time away from your kids or your husband or your friends. So there are these inner parts and inner stories as well. So we'll reflect and ask questions, we'll tell our stories and listen to people on the outside. We'll also do that with ourselves and learn skills to connect with what's going on the inside. It's part of the self-care. And along with that comes looking in the mirror. These are also great images. A little boy and a man and a woman looking in the mirror at themselves. To look in the mirror is to show up and say, this is who I am. And you look and you say, this is who I am. This is also who I'm not. This is what I'm willing to offer. This is what I'm not willing to offer. This is what I'm willing to receive right now. This is what I'm not willing to receive. We get really honest by looking at ourselves and seeing who's there and allowing that person, the one that we are right now, to show up and be embodied in our lives. That doesn't mean we can't have goals and visions and dreams and want to do other things. Those are awesome, but we start from where we are instead of this image of who we're supposed to be. And once we get to that who we're supposed to be, then we'll be worthy of love or belonging or connection. Most of us have a list that says, I'll be worthy when. So what you'll be worthy of, you could fill in. Maybe it's love, belonging, or connection. Those are at the root of most of our other things that we say we need. And the I'll be worthy when could sound like I'll be worthy when I lose the weight, gain the muscle, get the job, get fired from the job and start my own business, get pregnant, when my kids grow up, when I go back to school, when I'm done with school. Like, it's amazing how the same thing that one person thinks will make them worthy, another person wants to get out of in order to be worthy. The only thing, this is a Brene Brown, in her research, the only thing that she found that separated people who had a strong sense of love and belonging from those who struggled for it was their belief that they were worthy of love and belonging. It's that simple and it's that complicated. And so when we start looking at the mirror and in the mirror and accepting the person who's there and knowing who they are, meeting the person, integrating the parts of ourselves that we've pushed away because we think they're not good enough, then we make that journey. We make that step into noticing that we're enough as we are. We are worthy of love and belonging. And when we start doing that, we find we're not alone. I know that for me, I was super scared to go too far into this journey because I thought, well, everybody connects through pain and through disappointment and through complaining about stuff. Like, somehow, through school, through whatever, I just got the idea that that's how people, that's what they talked about, that's what they connected with. And if I stepped into this living a wholehearted and joyful life, living my purpose, I would be all alone. I know I had images for years of like, I'm going to be like a hermit in a mountain. Like maybe I'll be the wise woman or maybe I'll be the crazy witch or whatever, but I'm going to be this alone person. And that was not inconsiderable as an obstacle for me. And so I just want to say to you, we find we're not alone. Part of that is here we are showing up on this call together. We're not alone. Lots of people have been reaching out, being interested in the Facebook page, Year of Joys, coming on over to Year of Joy, registering for the workshops. You're not alone. Stepping into this work does not mean that you will suddenly have no one to talk to and no one to connect with. As a matter of fact, as we look within and do our self-care, we also reach out and make connections with others. we find we're not alone. As we embrace vulnerability and learn its language, we find we're more connected, more loved, and more included than ever before. It's a good moment to pause again and just feel into that. Feel into there are other people in the world who are doing this journey. And if it helps, you can know that 330,000 people like Brene Brown's Facebook page. 16 million people have viewed her TED Talk on shame and vulnerability. Another 5 million have viewed her other TED Talk. We're not alone. We might be coming together in little clusters here and there, but stepping into this work, this vulnerability, courage, the bravery, the openness, the valuing love and connection and belonging, and saying, I'm not going to settle for fitting in. I'm not going to settle for putting on this perfectionist veil or putting on my armor and feeling numb and never making that human connection. I'm not going to settle for that. Not anymore. We'll find we're not alone. And I just had to have this one in here. I think this slide has been in all of my free webinars so far. The bridge from shame to joy. This is what got me started on wanting to do these this year of joy, the year-long workshops. I imagine that shame anchors one side of a bridge and joy anchors the other. And in between, the original way I conceived of it was that it was just vulnerability. I've since added gratitude, sufficiency, and courage. But vulnerability, it's like the glue, the nails, the screws, and maybe it's some of the boards too. It's really intrinsic. Vulnerability is a huge part of that bridge from shame to joy. Sufficiency, gratitude, and courage are awesome as well. So we're going to click over to the last slide, which is me saying, come join me. I really want to do this work with you. I really want you to sign up for the full 12-week course. I want you to join in with other people, find that sense of not being alone, learn how to open up, speak your story, connect with others who are earning the right to hear your story through also sharing theirs and continuing to show up. But also, many of us find it's a little easier to be vulnerable with people that we're not actually going to really meet or have to hang out with afterwards. So you may create lifelong friends through this class, but in the beginning, the really sweet thing is you don't really know each other, so there's not much to lose. Like if you open up, you know how I said I'd have those thoughts going through my mind, like maybe this is the thing that's going to have him just walk away and say, I don't love you anymore, or I don't want to hang out with you anymore, to my lover. It's like, it's a little less risky to do that with people in a class that you're taking. You're going to hang out with each other for 12 weeks. You can open up and practice listening. You can practice vulnerability. You can practice imperfectly, and you have space to do that. Nothing really bad happens if you mess up. And you have support from me and from the other people in the class to learn what you could do to be heard more easily, more fully. It's also actually a really good place to do the practice with a partner. I know we've got 2 couples that are on the call this evening. And to come into this work together, it's a deep dive. It's really vulnerable. It's really intimate. It's going to stir up stuff in your marriage. And stuff gets stirred up in marriages anyway, right? They're vulnerable and intimate places. You really can't get away from it. So how awesome to step into that more consciously with some help and some guidance and with a support group of people who can talk to you and care, show caring without showing judgment. Like nobody else that's showing up for this class really has anything invested in your relationship. They're not going to bring their own fears and their own judgments into your particular struggles or challenges. So it makes it fairly easy for them to sit there, be compassionate. They're like, oh, I've got my homework, and my homework is to listen, to reflect, to feel this gentle empathy and curiosity towards what you're saying without trying to fix it. Okay, great. I'm glad I've got my homework. You know, it makes it easier for someone to sit with you. So this says, claim my seat for transformation. Yes, sign me up for one of 20 available spots. That's something worth mentioning. These classes are not going to be any bigger than 20 people. So if I get The maximum amount of people that I'm going to do right now is 40. I'm willing to run 2 classes, and then I'm willing to say that that's my boundary, that's as much energy as I can do and share with the rest of my life right now. I would love to have 40 people sign up. I would love to run the evening spot, which is 6 p.m. Central, 7 Eastern, 4 Pacific. I would love to run that spot. I have 1 person registered for it so far, so if it's going to happen, we've got to get another 5 people signed up for it, because I want 6 people minimum to run the evening spot. And we've already got about 8 people signed up for the 11 a.m. spot in the morning. So there are lots of spots open in the evening, and there are still about a dozen spots open in the morning too. So you've got some space, but oh my gosh, how awesome would it be to go ahead and take the step to say yes. To say, yes, I want to step into this work with you, Cassandra. Yes, I want to step into this work with you, the other people who are signing up in the class. To support each other and to show up is absolutely fantastic. And I am going to go ahead and type in the address on the Year of Joys page for registering for the evening class. So, oh man, I wonder if I can edit it. I can't. It should be yearofjoys.com. I had a feeling that typing it straight up was risky. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and change that URL, and then I'm going to open us up for questions and answers. So I want you to just go ahead and think about it for a moment and imagine what it would be like to go ahead and click on the link to go ahead, thanks Danae, and sign up to go ahead and be in the workshop, to embrace stepping into this work. Just imagine having the people that want to hear your story, learning, stepping into some theory, some homework on the 1st and 3rd weeks of the month. So it happens on Thursdays, 12 Thursdays between next week and December 18th, skipping over Thanksgiving. And on the 1st and 3rd classes, we get some theory, get some demos, get some partner homework. Partner homework you can do with someone in the class, you can do on your own with a journal, or you can do with someone who's not in the class, someone that you know that you want to make more connection with. Then on the 2nd week, so in between that 1st and 3rd, on the 2nd Thursday, there's going to be live hot seat coaching. So I'll invite you to let me know if you want to do a coaching session with me, and there might be just 1 person who gets a chance to do it. There might be 3 or 4 or 5, and we'll do shorter sessions if that's the case. So live hot seat coaching, where you get to bring something real that you're working on in your relationship. You get to get coached. The other people get to listen. It's like a little fishbowl. We learn so much from listening to each other's stories and journeys and challenges. There is no requirement to do anything in this class, but there is opportunity to get coaching with a lot of witnesses, which is a very powerful place to be. And then on the 4th call of the month, we will have space for sharing stories, maybe sharing stories of shame, vulnerability, scarcity, joy, things that are going really well, insights, questions. We get to talk amongst each other. Your voices get to be heard a lot more than mine on that 4th call of the month. The classes are all structured to be an hour and a half long. I believe that the 1st and 3rd will probably be pretty close to an hour, maybe an hour and 15 minutes if the demo is really interesting and goes a little bit longer. And then the 2nd and 4th calls will go as long as they need to, up to an hour and a half. I am hoping that we will embrace and step into that idea of sharing stories, and we'll take, and doing the coaching, and we'll really take the full hour and a half for those. I think those are going to be some of the richest and most fascinating parts of this journey together. Okay, so with that, I'm going to go ahead and take all of you onto question and answer mode.
All attendees are muted and may unmute themselves by pressing *6.
So, as the little electronic voice told you, if you unmute by pressing *6, I should be able to hear you. You can ask questions. If somehow you're asking me a question and I'm not hearing you, you can go ahead and type it in the chat. And if neither of those work, then I will apologize and we will try to troubleshoot it with any meeting, which is the company hosting this. Okay, questions?
Yeah, Cassandra?
Mm-hmm.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yes, go ahead.
Okay, Patricia. I know that I've registered for a number of things, but I think they were all the webinars. I don't know that if I've registered actually for your class yet or not.
You haven't, and I would really love you to do that. I just checked that today. So if you actually go ahead and click the link, and because you have already paid me and you get the special little discount code, I'm going to tell everybody the discount code, but you know what? So if we have how you're going to pay me, it won't really matter because I'm still going to come and ask you. But you could do it anyway. Anyway, you type, you go to that website right there, and then the discount code box, you type free.
Okay.
Super secret.
So when you say click the, I'm looking at your picture with the Claim My Feet.
So to the left of that, way over to the side, there's kind of this gray vertical bar, and there's some words typed in there. Like I'm going to type something like, "Hi, Patricia." So
okay,
little
so
white
that,
letters.
yeah,
right above that is
cool.
the link.
Oh, right, okay. Because you know, I'm going to try it, but you know the link, the other link.
Danae actually typed it in.
Yeah,
really
the one for the registration for the gift didn't show up. Oh, no, we're sorry, but due to a bug in Safari, you will need to use a different browser.
Oh, interesting.
Can I go? Can I try signing up through your Facebook page?
Yeah, we can totally connect about how to get you signing up. I'm sorry that it's not working, and I would love to troubleshoot that with you because I don't want people to have errors on their, trying to sign up and not being able to. Like, that's kind of frustrating. I want it to be really easy.
Okay, so it says try Chrome or Firefox, but I don't have Firefox on my iPad. So that it might be because I'm working on my iPad, not my computer.
Okay.
So maybe when I'm home, because I'm not home, I'll try getting in on my computer. And if I still can't get it, I'll just message you or something.
That sounds great. Yeah, just go ahead and message me if you can't get through. Cool.
All right. And so just to let you know now, it would be the evening class.
Okay, great. That was kind of fun, Danae. You turned on your camera and everybody could see you. You're welcome to come on.
I turned on my camera?
And I could go ahead and, if people can turn on their cameras. It'd be fun to see them. I cannot hear you at all. I don't know why. We will have to track down any meeting and figure that out. But you can type. I can see that. So you want to go ahead and type anything in there today? So thanks, Patricia. I'm sorry that it's not working in Safari, and maybe we'll see what we can do about that.
Oh, did you say you could see me?
I can't see you. I can hear you, but Danae, who's also typing in, and Danae's pretty awesome. She's totally helping create and market these things, and she's doing the Year of Joys website with me, and she's 604 website, so she's one of the free gifts that's being offered. She's offering the free website upgrade. So if you're at the computer, you can see Danae there. So.
Yeah, my iPad's messing all up, so I can't even get back to your slides again.
Oh, okay.
But.
Cool. Well, thanks, Patricia. I'm glad you showed up tonight.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it was great.
Awesome. Thanks. Let's see if there are other questions. Anybody else has things that they want to ask about? It doesn't just have to be questions about registration. It could be questions about some part of the content. It could be a question like, oh my gosh, it's only $297 for all 12 weeks? Cassandra, what are you thinking? And I'll say, I'm trying to make it really accessible because I think this work is so awesome. Oops. I think I just accidentally disconnected Danae. That's really funny. I didn't know I could just... I have to be careful. I can just disconnect any of you really easily. Hopefully she'll call back in. All right. If there aren't any other questions, we'll do a little settling meditation and say goodnight to y'all. So at any point, if you want to, feel free to do *6 and unmute yourself. Going ahead and breathing again, just taking that deep breath, maybe opening your mouth and exhaling. And then squinch up your face. You can see me if you want to, but you can also close your eyes. So go ahead and squinch up your face, and then open your eyes really big and wide, and maybe take your hands and like stretch your fingers, and then soften. And just let your body fall as it will. And in this breath, in this moment, when we're in the in-between stage, the liminal stage between what we've just been doing and what we're about to go do, we're not quite done with the webinar yet, but we're getting into that transitional point. Notice anything that was a highlight for you. Notice anything that you want to take in and hold and allow to be a part of you and grow. I suggested you might want to take in that image of a woman surfing. Obviously, you could take in the image of a man surfing too. That image of surfing, so that when you're having a bad day, when you're having, what we usually call bad days, you're depressed or you're sad or things aren't going well, you yelled at your kids, you did whatever it is that you don't want to do, you can take it as part of the journey, part of the surfing. Sometimes we fall off the surfboard. Sometimes the waves feel really big. Sometimes we've said we're going to surf some really big waves, and we're going to surf near rocks, and we have to step up our game. So it's not an excuse to slack off. It's a gentleness with self. Maybe you want to take in looking in the mirror, noticing who you are, what you actually have to offer, and what you don't. Allowing yourself to be really real and honest with who you are. Whatever it is that you want to take in, allow it to come in with your breath. Imagine it becoming part of you. Letting your conscious mind become aware of it, so that when you switch gears and go off to dinner or back to work or off to bed or whatever it is that you're doing next, you have your conscious mind with some awareness of what it is that you would like to take with you. Letting go of anything else for now. Knowing that information that you need will come to you when you need it, when it's the right time. You don't have to hold on to anything that you're not ready for right now. When it's right for you, it'll come back. And with that sense of freedom, taking in what you need, letting go of what you don't, I invite you to open your eyes, to stretch, to look around the room. Maybe you're in the room with someone else. You can just look at them and notice that you're both here and that it's enough. And with great love, I say goodnight and encourage you to head on over to ayearofjoys.com, head on over to the Facebook page, Year of Joys. Really, really what I want to encourage you to do is go ahead and sign up. Go ahead and do it. Sign up for the 12-week course, and the little image that didn't get on the slide here is that there's a money-back guarantee. There is a 30-day money-back guarantee. So you sign up, you get to do a full round, all 4 classes, where you get to do the theory and the demos, and you get to do the hot seat coaching, and you get to do the sharing. You get to do all of that, and then if you decide that it's not the right place for you to be, you let me know. We'll refund your money. It's pretty easy. All right. Mwah. Much love and good night.